What up, everybody? This is Johnny Ray. Welcome back to another segment of The Basement. I'm joined here today with a few familiar faces. We have Dawson, reoccurring member and co host over here,
What's up?
and also his, his companion. I forget your companion's name.
Dog.
Dog.
Yeah.
And then we also have joining us today Victor. He's also a recurring member, and this is his second time being on with us. So we appreciate you coming out here with us, Vic. Thank you for sacrificing your time and your efforts.
Thanks for inviting me.
And then we also have Robin here with us today. This is her first time, so thank you
Yes.
and welcome to the show. Um, so, for the most part, I was thinking about this the other day, and a lot of things are opening up again due to COVID, and I've seen like Disneyland's like thinking about opening again, and also Universal is open and everything. So then I'm all thinking like other things are opening up, and now churches are opening back up.
Mm.
So now, as I was thinking about this the other day, churches opening back up. Who is going to come back to church in person? I know a lot of people have been doing it online, and a lot of people kind of just stop doing it in general, and they kind of feel like they don't have to anymore, or there's like some reason. But it made me feel like there has been times where people have stopped going to church or have felt like they shouldn't go to church anymore for one reason or the other. Uh, COVID being an excuse to stop going to church, but how many people are actually going to return to church?
Mm.
And what is preventing people from coming back if they are not coming back? So that was kind of like my big thought about that. What do you think, Dawson?
That's interesting that you kind of related Disney and church as a nice little connection. What was the question? Sorry, one more time. I don't know. I just
No,
appreciated that
yeah. No, how do you feel about like people
people
like
coming back.
coming back into church, but also like for people also having reasons not to come back to church?
I think right now it's a really interesting time. Um, we're in a global pandemic, and people are getting vaxxed, but it's still not technically enough. And a lot of people have genuine concerns, especially right now. Of if I go back, is it safe for me to go back? A lot of people are worried about their health. Um, and then you have people like you said that just maybe don't want to go back for their own personal reasons. Um, I think I think people that weren't going to come back already, this kind of is like an excuse to not come back, because like, I mean, you have I, lukewarm people, that were they just kind of came to church, but they weren't really participating. There's like the type of people who's like, oh yeah, if I sit in the back and I make it by sermon, then I'm good. I do duty as a Christian,
You're checking off that box,
pretty much.
and it's like, all right, well, I went to church, so I
Yeah.
could say that I'm a good person, kind of thing,
Mhm.
almost.
Yeah, pretty much. So I think people who are already kind of like leaving, or like kind of on the, like on the fence of leaving, are just gonna leave no matter what.
Yeah,
Um,
and right now it's just a perfect excuse and
Yeah.
opportunity.
yeah, because a lot of, from what I've seen, a lot of people struggle with being in a form of organized religion and being in a church. Um, like I've had a lot of friends that grew up in a faith, Adventism, and as time grew on, they just they get their independence growing up, and they hit their teens, and now they're out and about doing this and that, going here and there, and they just slowly start straying away from the church. I don't know if you ever experienced stuff like that, but I mean, I've seen it. I mean, we've all had our own struggles. Um, I don't know what you guys have individually been through, but um, yeah.
And I think at one point, even just being younger, being in the church. For me, I didn't start going to church until I was like already older.
Hmm.
So I kind of feel like I made that decision to come to church, and I kind of really stuck with it. Um, as for like the struggle to stick with it, um, some things seem like burdensome in a church, and kind of go over that in a little bit. But I wanted to see what maybe Vic or Robin had to say about that.
Yeah, can you say the question again? Sorry.
Yeah. So I just kind of wanted to know like how you feel about like at this point in time. Well, it could also just be like kind of what Dawson was saying, just like in people in general, how like they've been in church and kind of don't want to come back or find a reason to not come back to church,
Yeah.
or also just like in general, if you kind of concede um, how people are using kind of COVID as an excuse to not really come back to church anymore.
Yeah, it's, I guess the way I see it is that, I mean, when the church was open, it feels like, people would come here because they've had such a long week and they can spend time with their family. But now that they don't really have that time because there's so many other things they could do on Saturday, that it's kind of like a relationship, like if nobody even checks up on them, how do you expect them to come?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's the way I see it. Like, if you're in a relationship, you don't talk to that person at all, how do you expect that relationship to work?
Right.
Right. So if they're like far away, like an hour away, and nobody calls them, contacts them, maybe they're still going through the same stuff,
Yeah.
but just to see how they're doing. um, Maybe this time made them realize, like, man, maybe my church doesn't care. That's just something to think about, so.
Yeah. For sure. What about you, Rob?
Oh yeah, just to piggyback off what Victor said, and what Dawson said, how I've had personally experience where going to church is just a check off, like, okay, I made it to a sermon, I can go home and do whatever I want to do. But just like what Victor's saying is that I didn't have that connection with the church. I didn't have anyone checking up on me, or where we could, I guess, not motivate me to go, but like kind of like, there's other people that I can connect with and talk to and actually hang out with and fellowship with. And so I feel like right now, people going back to church, there is, personal reasons as well, due to health. And so, but I think maybe reasons that maybe people are not going back, might be, because there's no one's checking up on them. There's no connection, that friendship, where you can build that connection with other youth and
like the fellowship thing.
That fellowship,
continue,
yeah.
Like in the midst of, I think that was really hard. Like trying to continue a fellowship with just your close knit people. Even like a few of my friends that I used to see like every other week. It just feels like due to this, it's like hard to stay connected. And it's kind of like, it's always in the back of your head. Well, like I don't really know if like this is 100% safe to go visit somebody because it's like health reasons, but also like on the other hand, you just get so consumed in like, people are quarantining themselves still, so people are staying at home, and you kind of get consumed into like whatever you're doing at home, and you don't really reach out as much or whatever. But I think staying connected into the fellowship is like a really good thing. But to get back on like topic of what I was saying earlier is that like there are people who've kind of been in church their whole lives, or just even been brought up in the church or whatever, and at one point or another they didn't feel the need or want to be here anymore in church or involved, because the church is the people, it's not the building, although people come to this building, but we are the church. So like for us, if we want to go get fit, we go to the gym. I have weights at home, but I feel like I work out so much better at the gym. And so like you could have your spiritual walk, you could be good at home doing your own individual Bible studies or whatever, but when you come to church, it's like a full on spiritual workout pretty much, and you get it all in. But Um, in some cases, church has become like a burden for some people, and then it doesn't become like a connected thing anymore. It um, you kind of feel well, in a way disconnected for one reason or the other. You could be going through something personally, and you feel like nobody understands you, and you kind of just kind of drift away at that point. Or you could be connected, or like connected in the church, but just not feel like there's a real reason keeping you here.
Do you think a lot of that, like what you just said, like those mindsets and mentalities, do you think that plagues a lot of our young? Because I've, I mean, a lot of people have noticed that, like, over the last, I don't know, we'll just say 10, 20 years, that like it's been an epidemic of just youth leaving the church. You know, they'll be raised in the church. You know, they'll be anywhere from like kind of active to like very, very active, and then it'll just be like over the course of like 6 months, they'll just drop out.
Yeah. Um, I guess from my own experience, like working with like a lot of young people that are in like high school and stuff with different churches, like
Yeah.
especially with COVID, like before, obviously I would try to connect with everybody, talk to everybody as much as possible. I remember one incident where this church member gave me her number, and it was like right when COVID, before we started closing down the church.
Yeah, like in March.
Yeah, and she gave me her number, and I just put it in my phone, and then she texted me, and then I was like, oh, hey, it's nice to hear from you. She texted me, and she's like, well, it would have been great if I would have heard from you first. I was like, oh wow, that was kind of rebuking to me because I was like, man, I should really be, texting or emailing church members.
Yeah.
But then I thought to myself, a lot of the like teenagers, the youth, they go to academies that are like private, right?
Mm.
They go there for 4 years. When they come home like during the holidays, but then they finish from there, but they never hear anything from their church members.
Yeah.
Like they don't get like a care package or a phone call or like a video. I mean, from what I've experienced. And they're stuck there, and then they end up going to college for another 4 years. So then that's 8 years that they're not even in church. Yeah, they're going to the academy, but
yeah, they're not connected.
Yeah, they're not connected with their local church and that the people that care for them. Because sometimes they think like, oh, this is where my parents want me, but little do they know, like the churches help them a lot, like with paying their tuition or with a certain part of it.
Yeah.
And they end up going to college and graduating and don't realize what the church actually did for them.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of like forgetting their blessing from that they've gotten from church because they just get caught up in just the fast paced.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to kind of like understand it because I didn't really grow up in the church.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I don't want to go to church, I'm not going to go to church. It's that easy to me,
Yeah.
Like, but now it's different. But I mean, the way I see the young people like do it, they just don't want to come. It's because nobody cares for them. Nobody talks to them.
Yeah.
They view them as that they're not really doing anything. Let me know if I talk too much because I want to say something else too.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Like I went
to talk. Yeah.
I went to this church, and it was interesting to me because this person was preaching, right? This elder, and pretty much they were talking about how like young people, like his whole message was on young people. And I was like, I sat down and I was paying attention, and I was like, wow, this is gonna be good. And then he starts talking about how young people just need to focus in school right now. Like just focus on your school. Don't worry about the church. Don't worry about anything else. Just focus on school. And in my head, I'm like we're thinking like, why aren't they coming back? This is because you're telling them like, focus on what you're doing now.
This is the worst message ever.
I was like, yeah. I literally, that's how I felt, and I was like, man, that's like so discouraging to youth. They're like, yeah, well, that's what my dad wants me to do. Wants me to finish my degree, and obviously when you're in college, I mean,
yeah, there's a lot of pressure there.
Yeah, you want to experience different things.
Yeah.
Some of my friends went to like PUC, and they only went there because it was a party school, even though it's an Adventist school.
Yeah.
Or Southern, or it doesn't really matter even if it's an Adventist school.
Yeah. Or it's
So-
a Pacific.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's yeah, and I mean it's certain youth are gonna go there because they want to have fun.
Yeah.
And even like this, I think he was like this. He's like the youth coordinator for the general conference, and he's like, young people want to do crazy things. He's like, they want to do things that they want to die for. Like they're willing to die for stuff. Like they're wanting to do something crazy. And I was like, that's pretty interesting. And it's like, that's why the reason why they jump and do bungee jumping or like skydiving. They want to do something crazy. Why don't you tell them to go do something crazy, to do a mission trip like super far that's crazy, and they'll go
Yeah.
do it.
You know what? That's a good point because I think a few years back we had sent like a bunch of young people out to Nicaragua, and they came back like just totally mind blown. Just like they came back just saying this was super cool, a great experience. And these are like people that like I would have never thought that they would have. I thought they would have been like, it's so boring over there. I'm glad we're home. They were just like, it was cool.
Are those youth that was here?
Yeah, that was here.
No.
And are those youth still in the church?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And I want to get down. If you wanted to add anything, go ahead.
Sure.
But I didn't.
No, go ahead. You
cut
can
off.
finish what you were saying.
Uh,
If you.
If you want to piggyback off anything he said, I would say it. So that way, because it almost changes the subject a little bit. But
Yeah. I think can you repeat the question so I can answer it?
I think
It
what
was question.
Victor was saying was like, is it that nobody's really checking in, and that there's like a lot of young people who kind of just want to do young and carefree stuff.
Want to do their
Okay,
own
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm similar to Victor. I didn't grow up like specifically like in the church,
Yeah.
and I feel like because of that, and youth who don't grow up in the church have already experienced a lot of things
Mm.
in life. I feel like because there's a lot of temptations, and they didn't really know the word of God in general, and so
Yeah.
I feel like those who did grow up in the church, they want to experience. It's like the reverse. Like those who didn't grow up in a church they crave to know like God. They want something more because they've already experienced everything.
Yeah. I
Versus
can
like
confirm that. That's
yeah,
how I was.
versus like
Yeah.
those who did grow up in the church, they want more other than
Yeah.
church and stuff. And I think it's also like because they didn't get to experience maybe like different things, as like for them it's like church was just a checklist. And I think
Yeah.
it also has to go back like having church in the homes, it really reflects on like also like is if they're also being encouraged to do other things and grow in their relationship with God and
Mhm.
as well. And I think it also really does a lot with prayer, like even though like my family and I didn't grow up in a church, my mom always tells like us that she always prayed that we would like really always like stay close to God. And so it's all those years that she prayed. And I went to public schools and we didn't find a church till like not too long ago. And
Yeah.
so I really feel like it's prayer and just the youth just wanting to experience more things because they didn't have that experience.
So perfect way to piggyback
Yeah.
off what you were saying.
Mhm.
So I'm glad you went first because this kind of helps me open up to what I was saying.
Yeah.
Another thing is that like if you look at it, and I'm thinking about like you asked, are those people still in church? And I said, no, not really. And so what I did want to point out is the reason why is because for those people who have been brought up in church most of their lives and they go to public schools and stuff like that, what is a common factor that they come back with is that church isn't cool. Church isn't a cool conversation to bring up with your friends. Church is not a cool pickup line. Church is not it doesn't sound like a fun event to go to.
It's like honestly for like it's like kind of looked down upon.
Yeah. And
It's
if
like,
you're
oh,
in
do you
high
go-
school, like I remember like talking to some young dude in high school, and I was in high school at the time too, and then he was talking about like I said, hey man, you guys want to go hang out? And this time I wasn't going to church for a long time.
Mhm.
So I remember asking him like, hey dude, you guys want to go hang out or do something like that? He goes, oh, I can't go. I got my first communion. And then I was like, oh dude, I didn't even know you go to church. He goes, yeah, I'm just trying to get my first communion. Like he didn't want to make it a big deal. Like, and he also didn't want to continue to talk about it because when I asked, oh, what's first communion? Because I had never heard of that before. And then he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, dude, you're in the class. Like, you're in the class. You're taking the classes. I'm sure you should know what First Communion is. I still don't know what it is, but and I'm hearing
what is First Communion?
I still don't know. Do you know?
It's pretty much a class where you learn about like the Ten Commandments, and it's like a 3-month class. You pretty much just read the Bible, read certain stuff.
This is for like
And it's like
Catholic
it's
church.
like a requirement for something, right?
Yeah, it's just to like if somebody is Catholic, they grow up Catholic, they have to go through all those different steps in order for them to one day get married. If they don't do that, then they have to do it even before they get married. If that's the route they wanted to
That's
go through.
what it is. It has to be like
It's pretty interesting.
Complete understanding of something before you could even like enter your complete adulthood, being in married life or something like that.
Yeah.
So when I had asked about it, they didn't know about it, and it's funny because obviously it's not a popular topic. And this guy, who was a cool guy and a cool friend of mine, and I was just curious, you know what I mean? He didn't want to talk about it. Why? Because it wasn't cool. It wasn't a cool conversation. If you are out in the public world and you're not like being brought up in like a specific environment, like maybe like a private school, or like based off of like a religious private school or something like that, then there's no reason to talk about God. Why? Because it's not a popular topic. And if you're young and you're a teenager, almost like what you were saying, you're still discovering yourself. You're discovering the things you like, and that's your time to either go find yourself, or be able to be content with what you have or what you know. And more often than not, the world is very enticing, and out of all the cool checklist things you could do in life, church is probably down here instead of up here with skydiving, bungee jumping, racing cars, motocross, skating, girls, guys, all that stuff. Church is down here. And because I'm thinking the list of things that is cool, what are you going to do at church? And what's keeping you there? So
what keeps you there?
What keeps you there?
Yeah.
I think we should ask Vic. What keeps you in church?
I think definitely like understanding God's love. I mean, I didn't grow up in the church, so for me, I always wanted to do crazy things, And it was kind of weird because you're like saying like how like young people want to do crazy things.
Yeah.
I remember an experience where I would come to Vespers, but then I would go to a party, kick back, go party. And then that's what I thought was fun. But then after a while, it got kind of boring. I was like, man, this is kind of boring. Like I had actually more fun over here because they're always like laughing, talking. They're not just sitting in a corner drinking.
I remember you telling me like, oh, we gotta go like right after you guys, and like, peace out, Johnny. I'll see you later. And then I'm like, all right, man, I'll see you later. And then like I hear you talking with like somebody else all the way back, and then I'm like, well, you guys went to a party afterwards? Like, dude, I was tired. Like, there was no way I was gonna party after that. But
it's actually like this kind of off topic, but I remember going to a party one time and actually saw a church member. Kid, and I was tripping out. I was like, dude, they're gonna tell the church that I'm going to parties. I'm tripping out, and they're like, I was trying to hide from him because I was like, this guy's like grew up in the church. He like knows all this stuff. Like I barely started going. They're probably gonna kick me out. But
I know who it is.
Yeah. But I was like tripping out. I was trying to hide from him because he's like, I was like, why is this guy here? I was tripping out.
Yeah.
But I mean it. Ultimately, like it's definitely God what pulled me in, and just really because I was trying to find these different things in my life where I was trying to make myself feel better, and those, whether it was drinking, partying, or hanging out with friends, I thought it was going to be what was going to make me happy. But ultimately, being in the church was what made me happy. Not just that, but people like keeping up with you, going back to the same thing, like either Johnny texting me or Leuston calling me, just random people.
Shout out Leuston.
Yeah, like like it was. I was always like, I got to the point where they would text me, and I would feel bad. Like
from here?
Yeah, I'll be like, man, dude, why do they keep texting me? I'm like, cool, thanks. Cause I'm like, what am I supposed to say to this? Like, you're always sending me verses every day. I'm like, I thought it was like, but at the same time,
you were real brief, or you wouldn't text back.
Yeah, they were ministering to me though. Like, even though they didn't realize it, like I didn't read my Bible back then, but when they would text me a verse, I'm like, oh, I'll just read this for the day. But it made me feel good, man. I'm like, man, this is pretty cool. So then that's what interested me to like study my Bible more. Like just one small text can go such a long way. That's what I'm saying. Like if you just text people, call them, email them, or message them through Instagram or Facebook, like, dude, that's gonna really impact somebody's life.
That's true.
I want to say, like, to your question. Um, so, like I had mentioned before, the church is the people. It's not the building that you go to. So what keeps me in the church is the fellowship with the people. And I feel like another reason why some people leave church is because the wrong kind of fellowship is being given. Not in a sense to where like the people where you hang out with your peers and stuff like that. Like here in this church, I've definitely felt the love from everybody. And although I'm very different from everybody, I wasn't made felt like being different was bad. And I was accepted, and the relationships that I formed with people. I mean, I could literally talk to these people from the time that Vesper started would be at like 7 o'clock, and we'd be here till like almost midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and like just talking because it was good conversation. And we'd have a Bible study before, and then we would just talk real life after, and that would be something that would make me want to come back every week. But on the other side, on the flip side of that, there are different age groups in churches. And I feel like this creates a gap with some churches. There are some churches that are very impersonal and very big. So you go to these very big churches with all these pews and chairs and stuff like that, and they'll tell you, say hello to the, good morning to the person next to you. And you're like, oh, good morning to the person next to you. But you don't know that person. And that person is probably not going to care about you at the end of the day.
And they'll talk afterwards.
Yeah. It's very impersonal, like with like stuff like that. And then there are other churches where there's like a smaller congregation, but these smaller congregations have like there's the older groups, people who've been here for a while, the elders in the church, stuff like that. And sometimes just the generation gap creates some kind of barrier, and that also kind of pushes people away from church because um, I mean, I could even say like there's been some kind of things that has happened where I've almost been like, what? Well, that sucks. You know, like I I showed up to church one time and I just had jeans and a t-shirt and everything like that, and then somebody came up to me and was like, "Oh, why aren't you wearing a tie? Or why aren't you wearing a collared shirt? Or why aren't you wearing?"
Wow.
And I'm all like thinking like, I just came as I am to church because I wanted to hear the word of God. I didn't think that my clothes mattered, and that's a deterrent for people to come to church. And like, I should just me personally, I praised everybody who walked through the door that I knew would have a hard time walking through the door because church isn't cool. If you brought yourself to church and you walked through the door and you're a young person or even an older person or anybody who's kind of like has that mentality like is church cool or whatever, and they're still borderline on the fence or something like that, I'm not going to say, how come you didn't dress up today?
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, thank God you're here.
Glad to have you.
Glad to have you here.
Yeah.
You could be in swimming trunks and a tank top, and I would not care.
No.
Yeah.
Or there's also been times where, certain type of music is too offensive for church, even though it's still praising God and the lyrics are just amazing or something like that. You play the guitar a little bit too gnarly and it's too much. Or you have a drum solo in there and it's like, well, that's a bit loud. And it's kind of
pulling what you've been saying about deterrence, and then what Victor said earlier about young people leaving.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the relationships,
Mm-hmm.
If when you're young, and I mean we're all young, but like when you're in your teens and you're looking and you're looking for your place in the world, you're just trying to figure out who you are and what you want to do with your life, and you're just trying to fit into whatever group you can. And I felt this when I went through that phase. Is a lot of times you feel like you don't really have a spot to go in the church, because like you were saying, you have all these different generation gaps, and you might not necessarily have people around your age, or there are people around your age and you just don't click with them.
Yeah.
And for when you're young, and
That matters.
very impressionable.
Yeah,
It
all
matters a
that really
lot.
matters.
Because if I know people, I have friends that the only thing that kept them in church, the only thing that keeps them in church, are the people, are
Right.
those relationships that you build, and a lot of people don't build that, and they leave because of it.
If
It's
you
sad.
if you don't have it, or you don't keep it, then it just goes.
Yeah.
And friendships do come and go in churches and stuff like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
But I know that there's a good amount of people that that were very strong in coming to church, and just even being in a youth group with these people, what everybody brought to the table was like amazing. And people were. It's funny because I feel like I was in this youth group, and I was a youth leader in this youth group, and all these younger people that were there, that we were trying to teach and share with and mold and stuff like that, and help um, kind of be the example. And some of these people were like ministering without us trying to say, "Hey, you should go talk to that person." They would just do it on their own, and it was kind of like amazing because you would see the fruit that was coming from being connected with everybody. But those same people that didn't stay connected with whoever they felt close to in the church, they're not really here, and it shows.
Yeah.
And it's a bummer because it's like I feel like what's the real reason why people do anything, right? So it's like interest, right? So if your interest is peaked, then you're gonna be there. But if your interest isn't peaked, then you're not gonna be there.
Robin, I have a question for you.
Sure.
You said you didn't necessarily grow up
Mm-hmm.
starting the church,
Mm-hmm.
and Johnny's talking about interest, right?
Mhm.
Piquing your interest. What piqued your interest into coming to church in general?
Into
That's a-
like officially coming to church, not
Yeah.
checking the
Oh,
box.
Yeah.
That's a good question. It's actually what you guys mentioned. I was craving um connecting with other young people who had the same interests and morals as like I did. Who,
Mhm.
because at that time, um, a lot of my siblings and I, like we had friends who were not Christian, and they all had other interests, and so like when we would go to church. Um, or do anything like church related, we wanted to connect with other youth and to be able to, um, I don't know, it was just like this interest that sparked. Like, I don't think it was anything that really like drew us because it's not like we had, it's not like it was kind of like we saw young people connecting together. We just wanted it for some reason.
Yeah.
Like, we just wanted to connect with other young people who are also, who had the same interests and beliefs as we did. I don't think it was anything like special. We just wanted to. And so, I think helping us stay in the church was connecting with the young people. Like you said, like I remember visiting Whittier church, and you guys would have long conversations that would last like long nights. So, and like, but you know what? Those are like really fun, memorable moments. And I really think it's the experiences that also like help me stay connected to, like to remain in church, like going to mission trips or, um, even after Sabbath, just going to get boba, it's like just like as friends and just connecting and talking and laughing. And those are like my favorite like moments and
Yeah.
that really the things that I look forward to, and even that you talk about God, like, wow, yeah, we could do that for church. Like, that'd be a really good, amazing ideas. And you connect and you build and, something like amazing together. And it's awesome. So I hope that answered the question. But
did.
it was,
It
yeah.
totally did.
It absolutely did.
How about you, Vic? Or did you kind of already answer the question? But I want to say, like, in the events of you coming to church, is there ever a time or a point where you felt like maybe you don't want to come back?
Yeah, for sure. When I would miss.
You would miss, and you were like, I already missed one.
Yeah, like I guess because I was just melancholy. I would miss one Sabbath, and I was like, you know what? I'll go next week. But then the next Sabbath would come, like, you know what? Maybe they're gonna say something to me. I think it went off for like 3 months.
Dude, I remember
Where I
like
missed.
asking. I remember asking, dude, what happened to Vic, man? I haven't seen this dude in forever. And then Lucian's like, yeah, I'm gonna text that guy. And
I
then
just felt
so
bad, dude. Like I felt bad. That's probably the only time I felt like I just didn't feel comfortable coming because I would miss so much. And then Lucy's like, bro, whether you're hungover, that's what he said. Whenever if you're hungover, come to church.
if you're high,
Yeah,
come
he's
to
like, if you
church.
just want to come for food, just come for the food. I was like, all right, then I guess I'll be there. And that's sometimes I would just come for the potluck. But I mean,
I
it
tell
was still, it
people
was
that
still
all the
it was still
time.
the fellowship.
It
And-
works.
I was like, you want a free meal? Just come down to church, and afterwards we'll do potluck or even Vespers, because we always try to do like food with Vespers,
Yeah.
and then we'd be like, you know what? We're gonna have this thing, and we're gonna have pizza, or we're gonna have this thing, and we're gonna do haystack nachos, or
Yeah.
we're gonna, and like I didn't care if anybody just showed up for the free food, or if they showed up for whatever, but they showed up.
Yeah.
And I think that's funny that you say that, because there are some times where people, they miss church, and then they don't go, right? So then there's this lengthy period of time, and sometimes they'll even have like a valid excuse, like, oh, my grandma just died, or oh, this just happened, or we're on, my family went on vacation this month, or something like that. But then when they come back, and there's that ability to come back to church, and then there's this absence, and you're kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
I kind of don't want to go back. Or there's even been times where I've talked to some close friends, and they were kind of actually older than me, and they had gone through a loss, and I went to talk to them, just because I really missed that person, so I went to go visit and thank them for all the things they've done in my life. This person said, like, yeah, I just feel like I haven't gone to church in so long. If I come back now, like, I don't want to hear the people saying, where have you been? I don't want people asking me, all these questions. I just want to be able to go back and just go back to the way it was. And I told them, like, hey, you're gone for a while, so people are going to miss you. And yeah, some people are curious and whatever, but that doesn't mean that, like, that's something that should hold you up from going to church. And I remember after I had said that, and I said, people just miss you. They want to see you. You know what I mean? And I was like, I could have done that so many times before too. Um, I was like, but just show up, and like for the people that are there just to enjoy your company, just enjoy their company. And for the people that aren't there, that just want to know, hey, where you been? How come you haven't been here and all that stuff? I was like, just don't worry about it. And then the following week, I saw that person in church, and I was just really happy. But then after that, I didn't see them come back, and I think that they got a little bit of the dose of what they didn't want, and it just, when they came back and they got exactly what they didn't want, they just didn't want to keep up with it, and it was kind of heartbreaking. But I mean, it happens.
I think it's just that fear of being judged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the reasons
Yeah.
are, and you feel like you have to make up an excuse why you didn't go, and it's like, it could be like you said, valid reasons, and like you also said, people are very curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
are naturally curious, and so
Kind of like
yeah.
what Dawson was saying earlier, like in the beginning, that some people are on the verge, like they're just waiting for something,
Mm-hmm.
so they can just, all right, this is my turn to leave. But I just to like share this, I think in Hosea 4:6 talks about that my people perish because of lack of knowledge. That long term, the reason why I feel from the young person's perspective why they leave the church, because they don't really understand the concept of God's love.
Right.
Because sometimes church members or churches don't really reflect that to them.
I
That's
agree.
true.
I agree with that in a sense, to where there's this kind of repelling argument where if you sometimes you go to church, and I like the Bible verse that kind of comes to mind, but some people go to church assuming that everybody goes to church should be real churchy. And so what I mean by that is, if you read your Bible, then you should be very nice, you should be generous, you should have the turn the cheek mentality, you should always be loving, you know, um, anything and everything above that comes with the fruit of the Spirit anybody who goes to church should be that person. And then when other people in the church are not that person, or they kind of seem like they've been going to church for a while and they're still not that person or something like that, then they start thinking, well, this church is full of hypocrites,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, now I'm in a church where all these people are fake, or all these people like are supposed to be really nice and accepting and understanding and all this stuff, and these people are not accepting and understanding. Then what's the deal here, you know? And so when they get that, then there's kind of like this feeling of hypocrisy, and you don't want to be a part of this hypocrisy.
Yeah.
And so it kind of detours you away from church. But one thing that we need to take in consideration is anybody who's seeking Jesus is under construction. It doesn't matter how long they've been under church, under the church roof or hanging out in fellowship or whatever, but literally you are under construction every single day, and God is working on people, and some people are more stubborn than other people, and we can't take those people as examples of Christ, because Christ is the only example of Christ.
Yeah.
And all we have to do is try to strive for that. And but I feel like it's very deterring when you come to church expecting people to act Christ-like, and there are some people who don't act Christ-like, and you end up feeling either more judged or misunderstood. And so, kind of just to switch into another gear here, we did have someone come and send us a question in over the internet, and it says, "Why do you think it's important to have a relationship with church as well as God?" And I'll leave that open to either one of you guys to answer, but that's kind of a really good question.
So I recently got like a trainer, and this is kind of going to your question, and it's just for accountability, right? He'll like text me like, "Hey, did you work out today?" I'm like, "No, I didn't." You know, so it's like, I think that's why it's important to have that connection with young people, not necessarily to. There's two different ways that people can. Can you repeat the question? Sorry, my mind went
Don't
blank.
even worry about it, man. I have ADD, so like sometimes I'll be here and there. But it says, "Why do you think it's important to have a relationship with church as well as God?" Church being the people.
Yeah. I guess because young people want that community. You know, from what I've met before, there's some young people that when I used to work in Indiana, where I think there was when I first got there was a list of 73 people missing that didn't go to church anymore, and there was like 20 young people that didn't go to church anymore.
Right.
So I asked them like, "What have you guys done to reach out to them?"
Yeah.
"Oh, nothing." Well, that's the issue. We haven't done anything.
Right.
Just we have to call them, visit them.
Yeah, it's not like a club
Yeah,
where
not
it's
to-
like you put this big old sign up and it's like, well, whoever comes. It's up to them. You know, church is a community, so
Yeah.
like if you know it's a relationship,
Yeah.
you get back what you try to give into it. Well, most of the time, you know,
Yeah.
more or less.
Yeah. And
That may not be 100%.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's important to have a good relationship with the church, because if you don't have that good relationship, then how are you gonna know who's coming, who's not coming? Like some of them were like, "I didn't even know they were having this."
Yeah.
Like, well, here, let me get your number. But it's important to have that relationship with the church, just because you give them that option if they want that safe space to come here. Because
Yeah.
for me, there's times where, I mean, I knew Vespers was always here Friday at 7 p.m. Even if there was one person or two, like I always knew I can go there. There's times I was tempted to go to a party, but then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go check it out over here, you know. But it always gave me that place to go, you know, where I can talk and hang out, and or maybe just sit there, not do anything.
Charlie made it sound like you were this really cool dude, which you are. But he made it sound like you were this really cool dude, and that like I honestly, when you showed up and everything, like I didn't know, like if you were gonna dig being in that scene, because like I had asked if like you had gone to church before, and he said it didn't sound like you did, and so then I was kind of like,
Yeah.
I was like, all right, well, I wonder if this is this guy's scene, or if this is gonna be cool for him.
Yeah.
keyword being cool, because I really threw that out there. People
Yeah.
don't think church is cool, so
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't think if you're gonna stick with it, and you did.
Yeah, and I'm in that same situation right now with my nephew. We went on a road trip, and I kind of what I like to do when I like around young people. Young people want to experience life.
Mm-hmm.
They don't just want to be stuck at home and not do anything. For me, when I was in Indiana, I took the youth to go to. I was like, hey, we're gonna go to New York. They're like, oh yeah, I want to go to New York, and we took them. But I was like, when we got there, I was like, we're actually gonna feed the homeless, not just to walk around and look at things.
Yeah.
Like, oh, but they were cool about it. So with my nephew, I told him to go on this trip with me.
That's why you went to New York.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And my nephew came, and now I've been having Bible studies for 2 weeks with him. But I'm in that same situation where you're talking about. Like, I'm studying with him, but then in my head, I was like, hey, bro, like, if you don't think this is like you have any questions, or in my head, like, I'll just think like maybe he thinks this is boring or it's not cool enough, but he's like, no, this is cool, man. Like, he just wants to have that friendship, that fellowship.
Yeah.
And that's what people want. People want companionship.
To give you my answer on that question, you need that bond with people first, right? Especially if you're coming to a church and you don't know anyone, you don't know anything, right? Those people, those church members, they're gonna be that first link that you make. They're gonna be what keeps you there, or what gets your interest, right?
Right.
And then you start getting more interest, and then eventually now you're working on your own relationship. And it's important to have those bonds with people, but the only reason why you would gain those bonds is what am I saying? It's important to gain those bonds, but it's also important to have that relationship with God, because that's what's going to save you in the end. It's not going to be with people.
Yeah, that's true. Kind of to go with what you're saying, it's just something that I've thought about. Like, when I came to Whittier, I didn't connect with anybody. It was just Lucien and Johnny. It was like I never really got to meet any of the church members, to be honest. Like, I was a member here for like 4 or 5 years. Never ever did I ever meet any of the church members. Like, I mean, I saw them, but I felt like I never got to know them.
You never really, you would.
Or you were like here, just going to Vespers.
Yeah.
And you didn't really show up for church.
Yeah.
I remember when you did show up for church, I was like, he came.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I think that's something that needs to be done, is like, obviously more people need to be encouraged to reach out to, even if it's somebody young or sitting by themselves, just to reach out to them, talk to them, be more intentional. Because
Yeah. What about you, Robin? Do you feel like why do you think it's important to connect with the church as well as God?
Yeah. I think, like, just to go off what everyone said, you guys had really good points, accountability, and just that connection. I feel like, even like what Dawson was saying, is like that church is kind of like what connects you. And I I have seen that personally through experience, because the reason or how I got to know God more was through the church members. And, one of the church members was willing to give my family and I Bible studies.
Oh,
And
that's
so I
cool.
feel like
Okay.
God created the church for us to connect and help each other grow and keep each other accountable, and
Yeah.
to nurture each other and to help each other grow and uplift each other. And so I feel like, it was God put those people in our lives to help us get to know Him more. And so because of that, we did learn more truths. And from there, our spiritual walk, grew.
Right.
Obviously it's always a struggle, but that's how it started and how it grew.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the Bible says in Genesis, it says it was not good for man to be alone.
No.
And so like I feel like it's funny that verse comes to my mind, because there's a reason for that. The accountability is definitely one thing, but the companionship is another thing. And to be able to have confirmation in things that you do that is right, and to have correction in things that you're doing that's wrong, like it is beneficial to have somebody say, "Oh yeah, that's not a good idea," or or if it's just somebody to agree with you or listen to you or whatever it is, but just to have somebody else with you, it makes a big deal. And I think that even just going into church for people who don't, I remember going to Calvary Chapel churches when I was a kid, and they had classes for the young people, and I would go into those churches, and I wouldn't know a single soul in there.
Mhm.
And I would go in there, and of course, the guy who's giving the message, really cool guy, has a good heart for God, really good at teaching the message. Thankful for those people. But for everybody else I sat next to, I either felt like their parents dragged them there and they didn't want to be there, or they were so involved that they were only involved in whatever ministry they were doing.
Mm.
They weren't involved in the church. So for me, I just sat there and I said hi to the next person next to me, and I developed no relationship. And every single time my parents wanted to go to a Calvary Chapel church, um, that's all I got. And like I know that the speaker, or the youth pastor or whatever, I'm sure that if he could have given me more attention, he would have. But I'm not the only person in there. You know what I mean? I may be the only newer person in there, but like everybody else is going up to him afterwards and being like, "Hey man, thanks," and they're like talking to him about the regular conversations they have, and I have nothing. I have no history with anybody there, and therefore, did I want to keep coming there? No. Church
No.
was a very uncomfortable place for me.
Yeah.
Because there was no connection. I didn't have
Like-
somebody to be with.
Growing up, like just going to different churches, like I felt the same. Like I don't know any of these people. You'd have like one person that's like, "Oh hi, how you doing?" Trying to want to know about you. But it's like, well, a lot of the times, it's not like people are coming over to just try to talk to you and actually fellowship with you.
Yeah.
It's a lot of just,
Hi, happy Sabbath.
Yeah. See you later.
Right on.
It's a lot of that.
Yeah.
And it's definitely deterrent.
And like I said, it's not good for man to be alone.
Mm.
That just goes for anybody, not just a man. But like one thing I was like, when I was listening to Robin say that like there was somebody who came and gave Bible studies in the church. Was there somebody like specifically in your group of peers that you felt like kind of really helped you walk your spiritual walk?
Yeah. Not a specific individual, but I feel like a lot of the youth in their own ways, even if it was like the smallest thing, the one that comes to mind was the person I mentioned earlier, was how I met like you and Leuston at like one of I guess the first big youth event where all the other youths from other churches came, and that was the first time I met other youths at other churches. And I feel like because of that, like because I like through the conversations and just getting to know you all, and Lucian sparking up questions like, "Oh, why don't you have Robin go do this for a certain position in the church, like for to be in charge of like doing this youth event or something like that." I guess someone just believing in you and just really, I feel like really encourages the youth, like, wow, okay, I have that potential to do that, because you don't see yourself as that, but if someone else sees you and encourages you, it's like, wow, like I don't think I can do that, but if you think I can do that, sure, I'll give it a try. And you never know. And from there, I feel like you grow. And for me personally, like I grew. I think Lucid mentioned to one of our youth at our church when we first started going, was like, why don't you have Robin as a youth coordinator, like for the church? And as I know, I'm sure they probably hesitate. Like she's really, she's new to the church.
Yeah.
But she's like, yeah, but she has a lot of potential. And there's so many,
They're like, she doesn't talk a lot.
Yeah, and she's like, she's quiet, because I was also quiet. Like I didn't talk a lot, and so, but eventually, like I did become the youth coordinator, and because of that experience, I was able to learn a lot, and grow my own personal walk with God, because I felt like, these young people are looking at me, and I wanted to be like a good example to them, and so I made changes in my life, and so it was a lot of growing. Like I started reading the Bible more because of that, and it was a lot of experiences that I guess that came all together to help me grow as a Christian. So yeah.
yeah, you're given that responsibility, and
Yeah,
you kind of just took it.
yeah.
That's cool. And I liked it.
I hope that
What
answered your question.
it did.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I was like,
What you said like really made me think like when somebody believes in you, it
yeah.
makes a big difference. And like I think that's another thing that like I was saying earlier, when you go to
Mhm.
some churches and you don't really feel that connection or something like that, you obviously don't feel like someone believes in you
Mhm.
to do anything. I remember coming to church, and I was a young dude. I was like 19, and I had
Mhm.
met Lucian, and I honestly thought Lucian was older than me too. So um, I'm talking to him, and he asked me like, "Yeah, do you want to be part of a help me lead a youth group?" And I was like, um, "Yeah, sure. I'm
Mhm.
down to do it." But like me, I had barely started going to church the year before. Like I have no like major experience of anything. I don't even know what that means. I'm just like
Mhm.
I'm down for the ride. Let's do it. But just having someone believe that I
Mhm.
was capable of inputting somewhere made the difference. And there's a lot of people who don't
Mhm.
like have that encouragement or that belief in them,
Mhm.
and because of that it's like nobody's gonna miss me if I don't show up, and that's
Mhm.
what sucks. Vic was talking about like um when he missed or whatever, and then he was trying to get away with seeing how many like times he would miss and then just probably not come back or whatever.
Yeah.
But then like people are hitting him up, hey man, how you doing, we haven't seen you in a while or whatever. And it's kind of like, well, I matter. Okay, so if I matter, then I want to be where I matter.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'll go back.
Yeah, I'll go back. It
Yeah.
means something.
And the only reason why it kind of made pushed me back to come in was because when I went to Calvary Chapel, I went there for 4 months. I was going to their Sunday, Wednesday stuff, but then I missed for a whole month. Nobody ever reached out to me. The whole year went by and nobody ever reached out to me. So that's what I thought was gonna happen here.
Is that
So
Calvary Chapel you made us go to that one time?
yeah, and I was like, why are they messaging me? So, it really goes to show what texting somebody does. But
Yeah,
I
and it's just
yeah.
like you mean something.
I
yeah,
think youth in general, like you said, they're trying to find their identity where they belong, where they're learning about their interests, and so at that stage, I feel like they're trying to, they want to fit somewhere, they want to belong somewhere. Um, and I feel like personally, like it was really great connecting with the youth because, um, if and being part of the church and them giving me responsibility, it felt like I belonged somewhere. Like, okay, like this is my responsibility to do this, and I was able to say hi to like everyone. I felt like very involved, and so I feel like just connecting and I guess all the things that we said just come all together. It's just youth wanting to belong, and when they don't feel belong and they like if no one reaches out to them and no
Yeah.
one's thinking about them, it's you know definitely it kind of they think like what's the point.
Yeah.
you know
I
yeah,
think
so
like in a way where we have like this relationship where God talks. Jesus is like the bridegroom, right? And then
mhm,
the church is the bride, right? And so like in that relationship of or just that kind of relationship,
mhm,
that kind of intimate relationship, somebody is seeking the other person,
mhm,
and that's what um, makes the other person feel wanted, right?
right,
So Jesus is constantly seeking the bride.
mhm,
It doesn't matter what the bride does, his love for her is unconditional and unwavered.
mhm,
So he seeks for the bride. The example of him leaving the 99 sheep to get the one. You know, it matters to him every single bit. You know what I mean? And so for us, being examples of people in church and stuff like that, ourselves, like when somebody else is in church, if we're seeking somebody in that part of a relationship, it shows a sense of intimacy that you're being looked for, and not in a bad way. You know what I mean? In a good way. Curious about you, want to know if you're doing your well-being. And it makes all the difference in the world. But for those people who don't feel that, almost feels like a failure on the church's part.
yeah.
mhm,
Yeah.
And I think it goes both ways, both ways, because it's like okay, how do I reach out to this person?
Who doesn't want to be reached out to?
Yeah, or because I haven't reached out to them in a long time.
Yeah.
And they're gonna be like, dude, you never reach out to me.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
who are you?
Yeah, like why? No, why now? Why do you care for me
Yeah.
now that I'm doing this? Now that I'm about to have like 3 babies, like why now? But
That sounded specific.
no. Oh no.
He looked
Yeah, no.
specifically.
Mercy.
I
I know
have
what you're talking about.
I have 4 kids.
No, but going
it's not me.
You know how you were saying that God is a relational God? I mean, even if you look at what he did with Adam when he's like, Adam, where are you? He's a God that seeks
Right.
you, right? Even in I think it's in a book called Desire of Ages, where Jesus comes back, and I think it's the Mount of Olives, and he's coming back wanting companionship. That's what the commentary says.
Right.
That he seeks for his disciples, but they were sleeping.
Yeah.
And he wanted that comfort. He wanted that the
Yeah.
companionship.
That was when he went in and prayed and he sweat blood, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then he was seeking like that comfort almost, right?
Yeah.
Because they loved him.
But it makes you realize like
Yeah.
if Jesus needed that comfort, how much do people need it? Like even though like it seems like we're going over and over
Yeah,
and over the same
so it's
thing.
important.
That's literally, it seems so simple, but that's what we need to do. We need to be more relational with people, more like just talking to them, messaging
Intentional.
them, because I mean I have a bunch of numbers of like young people that I've worked with Youth Rush. I literally message them like every 3 months, just because I don't want them to think like this guy only messaged me when we're about to do like summer programs.
Yeah.
Or they just need me because they want me to sell books. No, dude, like I want to hang out with you, and I care for you, and I hope you're doing well. You know, and even if they do end up leaving the church one day, I can probably still call them and they'll pick up the phone because I built that relationship with them as a friend.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's what we need to do. I mean, it's literally, we're talking about the same thing, but that's that simple.
It is.
And that important.
Yeah.
See, for us who have all been in some sort of ministry, we know what it takes to kind of pursue somebody or to make someone feel wanted or accepted or something. Reason why is because it was important to us. So we know that. But there are people who go to church and don't want to continue going to church. And there are people who find this pandemic to be a reason not to continue going to church. And you know, they're already doing life on their own. Maybe they feel like nothing has changed for them, and so they're fine with it. And there's also people who have gone to church, said, I've tried Jesus, I've tried church, and it doesn't work for me. And they're left in their own thoughts and their own ways of being already. And it's a sad reality. And I think that for the most part, there are people who leave church every day. And for the people who are in church and part of the ministry, or, you know, this topic or conversation is just eye-opening. Oh, what needs to be done? What I feel is pretty simple. It almost comes down to a simplicity of making somebody feel wanted no matter how different they are, or feel seeked out no matter how different they are. And we've come from a very diverse group of people, and it's still, I mean, I'm sorry to say that we used to have like 18 kids coming here every single week. And now, I mean, I don't even know how many of those people watch these videos or tune into church on the weekend or hit anybody up for a Bible study.
Or even think about Whittier.
Or even think about it, yeah. But the struggle is real, and I want to let you guys know that's part of spiritual warfare. Dawson, I feel like we're kind of running out of time here, but is there anything you wanted to kind of throw out there or ask before we kind of close up our time here?
Not really. We pretty much. I mean, like you said, we're just rehashing.
Yeah.
But it's so important. You know, just everybody's spiritual walks and having personal relationships with people who are also on their own spiritual walks. You know, it's so important. But I just wanted to thank Robin and Vic for coming on down and chatting with us for a little bit. Thank you guys much.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We appreciate you guys' inputs, and we also appreciate you guys, spending this time on a Saturday afternoon to make it happen. So we normally close it out with prayer. Robin, would you like to close us out first?
Sure. Let's bow our heads. Dear Lord, thank you for this time that we can just discuss and fellowship and understand and delve in why youth leave the church, Lord. Lord, I pray that you may give us wisdom and knowledge. May you guide us as we continue to figure this out, and that you may reach out to those who have may left the church, Lord, and that you may continue to grow our spiritual walks with you as we continue to learn and grow with you, Lord. And bless this ministry and be with us throughout the rest of this night. In your name I pray, amen.
Amen.